All right, guys, good morning. This is Taylor here. It's November 3rd, 2025, and we're going to go through pre-market prep again today. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'll continue to do these prep days, but I'm only going to we're going to be launching a new community, and it's going to be free, so you're welcome to join. But that's where I'm going to be posting the link. So you can see them here on YouTube afterwards, but if you want to join in live when I'm doing the pre-market prep or, in a timely fashion to be able to, prep for your day, then I'm going to ask you to join the community. So again, it's free and, no obligation to do anything, but that's where I'm going to be putting these in the future. So just a heads up, that's coming. Probably not this week, but next week we'll start pushing that up. So, all right, let's talk about pre-market prep, and let's go back to Friday. Let's talk about Friday, what happened Friday. And again, what I like to do is let's go back and see how well is this approach working in helping us understand what context might look like. So if you recall from the video last week on Friday, we were in something called a range expansion. Okay, range expansion is when the ADR is completely within the ADR DR range is completely within the RDR DR range. And actually what I mean to say is the IDR ranges here. Okay, I use this dotted line, not the solid line. There's a slight difference, just a small difference. But we were in what's called a range contraction. It means that price had contracted from something that was big to something that was small and really well contained. And so the way to handle that is I look at the entire day of the prior RDR session, the high and the low, and I kind of draw a box, and I'm looking for either this scenario where we get this really nice, big, massive breakout move because you get a lot of pressure coming in because of the contraction, or I'm looking at a day where, and I actually do this in the video, so we talk about this too. There's another day. Let me just jump ahead here. Okay, so it could do this too. So it's either it's going to take off up or it can still kind of take off down. And I talked about this scenario where a lot of times it wants to come back and retest kind of this other side of the range. So that was kind of what we were looking at. We also looked at our data. So what our data was telling us yesterday was that, well, let me just kind of summarize. Basically, once we get past this midline, it becomes mixed. So you have RX as a pattern. Okay, so RX looks like this. And then there was like I think there was downside. We'll look at it in a second. And downside looks like this. I think those are equal. Might have been upside too. So we might have actually seen this one as well. So it was just kind of not very, there was a number of different equal options, right? And so on days like that, I kind of have to play a little bit where I'm willing to trade both directions because I could get certain behavior, but I'm also wanting to kind of do it in a cautious way. Because if we were to set up, let me delete some of these. If we were to set up, let's say we opened right here. I think we actually did do this. So we open right here and we start going down. Okay, so this is like the box is forming for the day, right? So we could have this where the box just forms like this, or we could have had this where the box comes down here, boom, comes back up to here, boom, boom, and then we form that way. You see what I mean? I don't know if you can follow the lines, but we open, we come down, we kind of create that range expansion scenario, but then we come back up because we didn't create the top part of the range expansion scenario. Okay, so we kind of, that happens too quite a bit. So don't want to be overly confusing, but just letting you know, like this is a scenario, I think this day was a scenario where you just kind of had to play a little bit more along price action. Let me see if I can bring up what we were looking at here. Okay, so that is yes, upside, true, long, true. Okay, we didn't put in the transition, the breaching stuff. So if we put that in, okay, so you can see here that once we breach the IDR, the ODR IDR high on the, kind of during the market open, the RDR open, then we have range expansion and downside are exactly even. Right? Range expansion and downside are exactly even. Upside X is the one that was kind of dominant. Oh, actually, we had upside too. So we had these three that are even, and then this is upside. Very mixed. And then if we, if we kind of, I think I did also a scenario where what happens if the midline breaches. So let's just move this. Did I do one with the midline breaching? I don't know if I did one with the midline breaching. No, sorry. I didn't do one with the midline breaching, but in any case, we had a bunch of different scenarios, and what ultimately happened is, let's just kind of open this up. What ultimately happened is, let me bring my my box back up. We did that second scenario, right, where we came in, and then you can see, boom, boom, we came in, tested the low right down here, exactly what I said, tested the low right down here, and then we just kind of, that was it. So this was kind of picture perfect for the rotational version of a range contraction day, which is pretty cool. All right, so let me do this. Come back to here. Now guess what we have today? We have another range contraction. Yes, which is awesome. All right. Another range contraction. The other thing I said is that range contraction tends to mess with my data a little bit. So it does happen. All right. So we already went over the range contraction stuff. So what are the scenarios we have? We're above the midline. So I talked about this on Friday. Being above the midline is important. This is a good possibility that we do something like this. This is another possibility that we do something like this. We come down, boom, boom, boom. That's another possibility. Okay, so those are kind of our two big possibilities. From a data perspective, if we look at our data, where's my screen with data? All right. Let me bring this back over here. So we were range contraction. Oh, I need to check. Yeah, okay, so that's range contraction, downside X plus, and upside confirmation. Okay, so let's go into ES. So we had downside X plus. We do have a range contraction. We had a long confirmation, true day. Okay, so currently, let's take off Monday. Currently, 54% of the time when we have this structure opening up for us, then we do have an upside X plus. So 54% of the time we have an upside X plus. Okay. So that means that we, let's see, did we open? We opened, this is no good either, hang on. I got to get really zoomed in here. We opened on the inside here. Okay, so this was our 8:30 candle right there. We actually opened inside of the IDR high. Okay, so that does kind of throw off that number a bit. So when we come back here, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So we opened inside. And now we have range expansion. And I only have 2 records, so I need to take Monday off. So now range expansion is much more likely simply because we had this move that came back into the IDR, into the ODR IDR zone. So just because we had that, we went from upside X plus, right? So we went from this. Oh, hang on. We went from this pattern right here to this pattern right here. Okay. So that's kind of what we did. Now, when we have something that's so like small like this really isn't that big of a deal. It could have just been a fake out, right? And we could end up with this as well. Okay. Cause it's still on the table as an option. So I'd love to see a bigger break of this IDR high is what I'm saying. I'd like to see something that's a little bit more significant. Upside X plus is still there, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Is I'm looking at this option here. Obviously, if we get something like this, okay, if we never come back here and breach this again, we're getting an upside X plus. And if we're getting an upside X plus, we're very likely then to get a really nice move that busts out that way. Okay, that would be really great if we got a move like that. If we do kind of like come back down, right, then we are looking at maybe more of this kind of range expansion-y type of stuff. And it's possible that, because we're in a range expansion, that this is possible where we still get a really big move, but it's like developing, throughout the day more than just the open, so to speak, right? So we could get that. We could also even get something like this, which would be amazing if we had a really, really big move like that. So that's kind of what we're looking at. NQ, let me get out a replay here for NQ. Let's get into our current. Okay, so NQ, again, we have range contraction. Okay, something like that. That's my range contraction for NQ. It's going to look basically the same, right? We have downside X plus, we have long confirmation. We didn't breach in here. And so this is going to be much cleaner for an upside X plus is my expectation. So let's go into NQ, Monday, downside X plus, true, long, true. And then we opened above. So we have much stronger likelihood here, no matter how we slice it, that we're getting an upside X plus. So for me, until we actually breach this IDR high, I'm thinking it's going to be something like this is what we're looking at. So it could be a really, really awesome move too, if we do get something like that. Now, back what I said about the rotational part of range contraction, it does. Yeah. That's a very real scenario too. So just, this is my likely scenario is something like this. Okay. It doesn't mean that after this forms that it doesn't drop. So it doesn't mean that it can't do, like here we go, 9:30 comes up, boom. And then we do something like this for the rest of the day. Like that is very possible to do as well. Okay. So we're going to watch for that. You've probably learned by now, I like to look at scenarios and hypos. So I like to look at, hey, what if this happens, then this, if this happens, then this. This is the proper way to do a pre-market prep. You don't want to be so locked into a specific bias. You want to allow yourself to see where structural changes are going to happen and then be able to have a plan for how you're going to react to the structural changes. So my plan is, there's key things that have to happen in order for me to start looking short. Right now I'm thinking long in Q, but if, as an example, we break above this level here, I'm still going to be looking long. But if we break up and then come down, then I might be looking short a little bit more. If we, form this box and then we break down below this box, I might be willing to look short even before it hits this, right? If we do something like this and we break long, even above that box, I'm looking long too. So there's certain things that I'm looking for. Structurally, I have my probabilities about what's going to happen. Right now, my highest probability is upside X plus. And so I can play off those probabilities with where I'm going to be looking, but my probabilities change when certain things happen. So I want to be prepared for those. All right, that's it. November 3rd, 2025. Good luck today. Have awesome trading. All right, guys. Till tomorrow.